Welcome to Spilling the Real Tea. I'm Logan, and sitting next to me is the woman who kicked down the door, literally and figuratively, my mom and the broker/owner of Star One Realty Group Elite, Michele Rehm.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This podcast has been a long time coming.
Yeah, you've been in this business over 25 years, and you just finished your book, Kicking Down Doors. So let's start right there. Why did you decide to write it?
Well, a few years ago, in about 2022, I was coming up on my 60s, and Jeff, he was already tipped over, and we were talking about him retiring, and I thought, I really think that we need to write a book because we got a lot of things to talk about. And it's such a great story with what we've done over the years. In fact, people would stop us and, whenever we'd go anywhere, they would wrangle us into a corner and they'd talk about real estate. And it was always fun. And, so we just wanted to share with everybody. And so that's what we're doing with the podcast. It's, just fun. And it's not about, having deep pockets. And this is really a labor of love. It's a lot of work.
And Kicking Down Doors, that title has history, doesn't it?
It does. In fact, it goes back with your brother Tyler, and when I actually implemented it, but it really goes back to my first year of teaching. When I first, got out of college, I went and I was working in cocoa, and I had a principal, Mr. Horn, and he said, here's the thing. You have to do what you say you're going to do. If you're going to put them in a garbage can, you better do it. Now, we're going to talk about why you say it, but you've got to do it. So with Tyler, I, was knocking on his door, and he was, I think, in middle school, and I'm like, open the door. And he's like, no, I'm not going to open the door. And then it came out of my mouth. I could see it coming. I'm going to kick down the door if you don't open the door. And, well, he didn't, and so I did. And ever since then, he kind of trusted that what I said, I'm going to do. What about you? Did this happen?
I was going to say, and then me and Zach, my little brother, we tried the same thing, and you did exactly what you did to his door, to our door. And you were right. Like, if you say you're going to do it, you have to do it, because from that day on, we always knew she will do what she says.
Yes, and that includes going to high school with pajamas on if you didn't, that kind of thing. But, that's, I employ that same theory here in real estate. If you say you're going to do it, you're going to have to. You might get a slide maybe on, this or that. But, if you say you're going to do it, you have to do it. And that's one thing that we've kind of always, worked on.
Of course, this brings us to Jeff, who's a huge part of this story.
Yes, he is. Jeff, he walked the walk and he talked the talk. And he loved to talk. Everybody knows. He loved to talk.
And cookies.
And yes, we'll get into that. One of our stories down the road about how he came about with the cookies. But he worked from the minute he got up until the time he went to bed. In fact, when I first started working for him, before we spent every day in the car, he would call and he'd go, are you resting? And I was like, oh my God. And I'd get up and I'd start working because, I didn't want him to think I was resting. I wanted him to think that I was working just as hard as him. Yep.
All right. So let's spill a little tea on how this podcast got its name, because the original idea was a little spicy, in my opinion.
Oh, it sure was. Mainly because I had this thing happen last week with one of our contracts, and I was hot. And I told Logan, I said, we're going to do a podcast and we're going to call it Talking Shit About Real Estate. Because let's be honest, the real estate market for the last year and a half, pretty much 2 years, it has sucked. It has been a struggle. Any realtor out there, not your new ones, they don't even know any better, but all of us old timers, it has been a struggle because you just have to work at it every single day.
Exactly.
And it's not even predictable. You could predict, okay, if this is going to happen, this is going to, but now it just isn't like that. It's just crazy. And so, Logan, what do you think?
I was like, nope. I remember saying to you, I was like, Mom, maybe not that brash. I I think that's a little too much. Mm-hmm. So after we did a little family brainstorming, we were like, I think spilling the Realty is the name of it, and that's when that was born.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's still honest, it's still bold, just a little easier to stay on air.
Yeah, that's true. And so, I still get to vent a little bit and teach. But,
exactly.
But, we're not going to be so mouthy.
Okay, so now that brings us to, what do you want buyers and sellers to take away from this podcast? Because that's who we're really talking to here.
Right. So for our sellers, I want them to understand that the net is the real number. Like what they get in their pocket is the real number. Not like when they look on the MLS and they say, oh, Sally down the road sold for this or they sold for that. There are so many caveats to the closing of it. Like, did they pay closing costs? Did they have to, pay for this? Was there something broken that they had to give credit for? So lots of times people think they know, like, why this house went for this much and why this house went for that much. But really what you get in your pocket is what is the main thing. And also some people don't owe anything on their house. And you know what?
Exactly.
They just want to be done. They just want to be done. And so for sellers, that's what I want them. We need to sit down. We need to make a plan. And you know what? At the end of the day, when they're signing on the closing docs, they got what they wanted.
Exactly.
They got to sell their house and they got to move home with their kids or that is really what it's about. And, we're going to get into all the pricing and everything. But for sellers, that's what I want them to know. The bottom line, what you're putting in your pocket is what the real number is. And as far as buyers go, buyers today, I don't think they understand what's going on because with the interest rates, like the interest rates back, 21, 22 were low because our country was hemorrhaging. So they had to get some money into the economy. And so they think like a 2.5 or a 4 was normal. It wasn't. It was not. A normal is 6 or 7. That's normal. I remember in 86, we had like an 8 something. People who were in the 70s had 18%. So these interest prices.
We talked to someone the other day that said that they bought their house, I think in like 83, and she's like, I paid 13%.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Exactly. And so I think that, people, they just think, oh, the norm was 2.5 and 4, but it really wasn't. The norm has really always been around 6.5, 7.
Yeah.
But the thing is that especially here in West Pasco, the prices were always low. So of course, then the monthly was really low, which, I have some information on that as well.
So now this brings me to, if you could tell your 25-year-old self one thing, what would it be? Because that's where I'm very interested in, being younger. What would you tell yourself? Well,
when I was going to college in high school, I worked at Winn-Dixie over in Holiday.
Yep.
And I had a manager. His name was Mr. Shirley. Mm-hmm. And he would always say, and he was probably in his late 30s, maybe 40s, and he would always say, Michelle, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small.
Yeah.
And you know what? When you get older, that's when, that makes sense to you that, everything is small and you get it. We always have said the people who lose in real estate are the people who get out of the game. So, days on market, who cares? You only need one buyer. The buyer didn't come along yet. You just have to, if you have your systems set up and you're working those systems, then you just need to relax and trust the process. And you've said that a long time. Like lots of times Logan, even though he's young, he'll say, Mom, trust the process. We know we've got it.
If you put the right type of system in place, the process will always work out. I'm a firm believer that you and Jeff, since day one, have always got from start to finish, and it's usually very smooth. And that's the beauty of it. When you know what you're doing, just sit back, enjoy the ride. We got you. That's why you hire us.
Yep, that's true. That's true. The buyers, they need to be educated. The sellers need to be educated on this market. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a studier of the market. I study it constantly. And that's why at Star One, I'm going to start giving classes to sellers and buyers. I'm going to do a seller's class, and we're going to sit down and we're going to make some plans in a group. It'll be in a small group setting. And it's the same thing with buyers. You know, they need to be educated. There is no reason that they should be paying these landlords these exorbitant amount of rent. I mean, Zach was paying for a little 3-2-1.
No yard,
Nothing. $2,200 a month. That to me is a mortgage payment. And so, you know, I just think that really buyers, they need to be educated and not scared off by these interest rates.
Exactly. And so now this leads me to, what do you hope people feel after listening to our episodes?
Well, as for realtors out there that might be listening, I want them to feel capable that, you know, whether you're, and sellers and buyers too, whether you're buying a home or changing careers or just pushing through some tough times, I want them to say, hey, I can do this, because I've learned anything is that life is exactly what you make of it. And of course you need to have a little stress, because the stress gets you moving in the right direction, but it shouldn't paralyze you at all.
And I love that. And that's the story behind Spilling the Real Tea.
Yeah. And this podcast is our way of sharing the lessons, the laughter, and the real talk that's made the journey what it is.
And next time we're jumping right into chapter 1, The Ordinary World.
Okay, so grab your coffee, buckle up, and get ready, because we're getting started now.